All right, let's get our Facebook folks up in here before it's time to go. I see all these Colts ones. Maybe when the Broncos play the Colts, I'll just stream in the Colts one and just be like, "You guys stink." No, welcome in, guys. This is Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Carl Dumler on these fine Tuesday evenings. Carl, how you doing? It's good to see you. Good to talk to you a little bit today as well. Welcome back, man. It's been a long week already for me, so tired but happy to be here.
There you go. Yeah, no, it's good here. Continues to be scorching hot. We haven't had a day under 100 in I don't know how many days.
Oh my God.
You know, we had an evening where somebody goes, "Hey, it's 99. We can maybe go outside." And so my kids being locked up in the house because it's too hot to be outside is always fun. But we got a lot of Lego building up today, and school starts here in about 3 weeks. So we'll get back into it. Yeah, we're counting down the days for sure. But no, it's good to be back here. We got one more show before training camp kicks off next week on Wednesday. Yes, so just kind of, we're getting there. Football's back. Almost back. I don't want to jump the gun too much yet, but yeah, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to get the chance to talk with you again, man. Always a good time here on Building the Broncos.
Absolutely. It's always good also to see Dylan Von Arks in the house saying, "Sup, Broncos country." Make sure you guys hit that like button on the way in, like button, all caps there, and subscribe if you haven't already. Diamond Rattler. Diamond, you're normally one of the first ones to comment down here, but Dylan beat you to it. So 433. That's still good. You're doing well. Diamond Rattler says, "Boom, let's go." Good to see you, Diamond. Hope you're doing well. Kevin Gray also saying, "Evening Broncos country. Good subject tonight. Let's ride." Yeah, we want to hear what your guys is as well. I'm going to put it on a T here for Carl in a second, but we want to say hello to some more people. Mark Hoynack coming in here saying, "Evening Broncos country." Good to see you, Mark. W. William Henson coming in saying, "Hello, Broncos country." Good to see you, W. William. Hope you're doing well. Mike Gibbons, of course, also. Always enjoy hearing from Mike. He says, "Hello, Nick, Carl, and Scott. Go Broncos." And we got Colin Wood come in and succeed, score more points than the other team. Fail, score less. And that's our show. Good night, folks. We're going to go in a little bit more detail than that, but you know, it's about the journey, not the destination. Haven't you learned anything on your years wandering this earth, Colin? No. We'll get into it, but it's definitely more nuanced than that. But yeah, Carl, kick it off, man. You teed this up for me. I thought it was a good, interesting topic to get into because we have dug into this a little bit, but not so direct.
Yeah. Before I get to that, wasn't it John Madden always said that? Yeah, if we score more points, we're going to win the game. Something like that.
Just always, if they cross the hash mark line, it's a touchdown. You know, just like, okay, thanks, John. I mean, God, R.I.P. God rest his soul. Did more for football than a lot of people, most people. But sometimes there at the end with John Madden was a little bit a journey. Again, talk about a journey to the point of the conversation. Same way with us sometimes. So I guess I can't go too hard on John Madden for that. When you talk that much, sometimes you're going to have a little bit of a word salad out there.
Right. But all right. So subject tonight, we thought we'd talk about, just as we're getting ready to head into training camp and figuring out which players are going to be making this team and which areas maybe are going to be weaker than we thought, stronger than we thought. We'd get into this idea of the Broncos are going to succeed this season if blank happens. And I mean, obviously Russell Wilson has an MVP season. That's a given. You know, they're going to be successful if that happens. But and then kind of the opposite side of that, you know, the Broncos are going to fail this season if this happens. And so you guys in the chat, we really do welcome any of you guys giving in any of your thoughts on that. I mean, yes, score more points, score less points. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. But yeah, it's one of those interesting subjects of just looking at the roster and I guess kind of looking at the areas that are those question marks. That's kind of more where I'm wanting to go to with this and saying, okay, this is that group. We don't fully know what they're going to be. We've got a pretty good idea what Russ Wilson's going to be here at the Broncos. Good chance he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I know there's going to be some things with the offense adjusting and all that. You know, the running backs, we know they're going to be pretty good running backs, right? Mm-hmm. The secondary, they're going to be pretty darn strong. And I know I'm already eliminating a lot of groups here, but it's just kind of that idea. We know what some groups are going to be, but there's others that it really does hinder or explode the season into something greater, depending on how they turn out. And we got Kathy Lund saying, "Good evening, Broncos fam. Howdy, Nick and Carl. Howdy to you, Kathy. Appreciate you tuning in."
We got Jetty Splash as well coming in saying hi. Good to see you, Jetty Splash, with the can't remember if it's a sandpiper there in your picture, but either way, cute bird pic. We're here about the birds. Hashtag bird fans. But Carl, I'm going to kick it off to you first. The Broncos this season will succeed if blank. And also, before we even do that, what is success for you for this Broncos team this year? I mean, are you in a Super Bowl or bust landscape? Are you thinking that they need to have a playoff win? Is it more so about the winning the division, or is it just, let's say the Broncos go, God, 11-6, and for some God knows reason they miss the playoffs at 11-6? Is that a successful season, or what does it mean for you?
If they win 11 games and miss the playoffs, I'm still going to feel pretty good about the season. Like that means there was a lot of really great teams, and the Broncos were right there with them, and it should have been. It probably means they lost a tiebreaker. I can't see that many teams winning 12 games, 7 teams in the AFC winning 12 games or more. But yeah, I think playoffs for sure this year has to be the bottom tier, unless, like you said, it's 11 games and they don't make the playoffs. But bottom tier is that playoff, because 6 years of not making it, I think it's the second longest drought of any team in the NFL.
It's either the NFL or the AFC. It might be the AFC. The Jets have the longest. So it's definitely second in the AFC. But I'm not sure if it's the NFL also.
Right. So, and it's kind of hard. You go from Super Bowl victory to not even sniffing the playoffs here for the last few years.
Yeah, they sniffed it in 2016. I'm going to be pedantic on that, but they were one game away, right? That they lost that Titans game. It kind of imploded from there, but they were close. That Trevor Siemian first season playing, and it was, very much, a man made of straw. Not very good chance there, but trying to replicate that defense. But you know who's really helping us out here? Phil McLaughlin coming in with the support. Thank you so much, Phil, saying good evening, Nick, Carl, and Scott. Special teams have to improve. There's his. Broncos season will be a success if the special teams improve. Well, regardless, let's say I think that's even more so on the, not to put words in your mouth, Phil, but on the other end. The Broncos season will be a failure if the special teams didn't improve, because I can't imagine, the special teams greatness make or break in the season. But if they are a bottom 5 unit again this season, bottom 3 unit again, then it will probably be a failure, and you will probably be on the outside looking in. So again, what is success for you?
Yeah, like I said, success for me, making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I think the units we're going to talk about, I think these really could be the make or break between that. When we're talking about the AFC, I've been getting into it with a bunch of Chiefs fans this week. Oh my goodness, because they have this idea that if Orlando Brown sits out, it's no big deal. Like having a backup left tackle, a really bad right tackle, no big deal. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, do you not remember the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay where you had backup tackles in and how that went for you? I understand Tampa Bay had really good edge players and they got pressure all over the place, and the Chiefs did not have a great game plan going into that. But still, you're looking at the AFC West. You got to have some edge rushers to go, or really all the AFC West teams have great edge rushers.
Besides KC.
Yeah, besides KC. And so it's the one team that they needed to have that against. But yeah, and I'll start there. I think this season will be a success if the Broncos have great edge play. Bradley Chubb, we've talked about him quite a bit on this show. This is the guy that kind of makes or breaks that defense. If he shows like even a slight improvement over what he showed that rookie year, you're feeling pretty darn good about him at one of the edge positions. Yeah. Randy Gregory, can he stay healthy? Is he even going to be ready at the beginning of the season? I don't know. But if those two guys are healthy, you are feeling really good about that unit. You're the backups, a lot of question marks with them. Obviously, Bonito being a rookie, Malik Reed, kind of know what he is. We'll have to kind of see moving forward. And Jonathan Cooper had some nice flash moments last year. See if he takes that next step. Browning moving to edge, all those kind of things. I mean, it's one of those groups that has a ton of questions throughout it. Every single player has a big red question mark next to it. And if those turn out to be pretty good, if say 3 of them turn out to be really good, the Broncos could really have a really successful season.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. Edge is definitely, I've said it on all the shows, but especially with Scott in the morning, edge is probably the most volatile position on this team, because you have just question mark after question mark. Randy Gregory, if he's healthy, his tape last year was top 10, top 15 edge player in the NFL. Good. I mean, it really was. His traits are phenomenal, but because of, the marijuana usage, he's had a lot of suspensions. He's about 29 years old. Now he has the wrist surgery, new scheme. There's just a lot of question marks there. Bradley Chubb, healthy every other year. This is an on year, but who knows? And he's had multiple ACL injuries. ankle, all this stuff. You don't know about what Nick Benito's role is going to be. Baron Browning making the transition. Jonathan Cooper was fine last year, but I wouldn't say he's a plus on the pathway of being a plus starter in the NFL. I think he's a good backup, but probably not a plus starter. It doesn't seem to have the traits. Not everybody can be, Shaq Barrett coming out from nowhere. And then the same thing with Malik Reed. He's had sacks, but I think it's Brandon Thorne watches all the sacks throughout the season in the offseason and tabulates, quality sack versus non-quality sack. And I think Malik Reed has had one quality sack in the last 2 years, despite having like 13 or something. So not very good in that regard. So definitely the edge rushing position is big. Also big, we want to say hello to some more people coming in here. Robert Caslow saying, "What's up, Broncos Maniacs? Good to see you, Robert. Hope you're doing well." Colin also coming back in says, "It seems simple. Excuse me. But Vic didn't seem to get it. We just wanted to keep it close and hope for some miracle." I mean, there's multiple ways to win football games. But a lot of times it's comes back to what point I'll be making here. But we got Denver Luke 1 coming in saying, "What up? This is Luke Wright on YouTube, over on Twitch. Good to see you." Awesome. And Colin also saying, "What's success this year? Playoffs." I agree with Colin. I think overall this season, success or not equals reaching the playoffs. Now, I would say a playoff win is success, but because the Broncos haven't been there in so long, I want to take that step first, being playoffs. The other thing that makes it tough is that because the AFC West is so tough, that I think there's a pretty good chance, unfortunately, if the Broncos do make the playoffs, that first game is on the road. Because you're probably not, I mean, you might win the division, but I think it's probably a higher chance you're a wild card given what you're competing with there. Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, much better chance of making the wild card than the winning the division. For opening up on the road, that can be tough. So making the playoffs, I think, is the first one for me. What measures success this season? Michael Ronquillo in the house too, saying, "Good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos." That's what the hat says. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Says, "Go Broncos." Good to see you. Jeff Noyes also saying, "Hello, Nick, Carl, Dylan, and all in Broncos country." Hello to Scott as well. Roy Osborne coming in here saying, "Good evening, Nick and Carl and Scott. Can't wait to hear ask the discussion on a different definition of successful." Got into it a little bit. I think the Broncos just making the playoffs is successful. I want to say hello to Ernie Mays too. Let's go Broncos. Also, Mike coming in saying, "Beating the Chiefs and making the playoffs." Do you consider would making the playoffs and getting swept by the Chiefs be a successful season?
Yeah, because he still made the playoffs. Like that has to be goal number one. Obviously, you don't want to lose the Chiefs twice. That would stink. But I guess I kind of view it as a progression part of football. A lot of teams kind of take this of being really terrible, then kind of terrible, then kind of good, then really good. You're trying to take those steps, and it gets a little microwaved when you add a quarterback like Russell Wilson. Hopefully you go from really bad to really good. Yeah. But I mean, the Chiefs are still a good team. They've been winning a lot of different ways. I mean, Mahomes obviously helps, but they've found other ways to win games too. That defense has been better than I ever want to give it credit for, because I don't like Spag as a defensive coordinator. And I said he was going to be a failure with the Chiefs. And then they've played like a top 12 defense most of the time under him. And they force a lot of turnovers. Angers me how many turnovers they seem to have fall into their laps. But yeah, so, the ball bounces different ways. And again, if you're making the playoffs and still losing those two games, you still got that room to grow even more as a team.
Yep, absolutely. There is some argument. I mean, a lot of these key pieces this season, with your lack of draft capital coming from last draft and this draft, makes it that there are questions, I guess, as the quality of the roster around Russell Wilson beyond the season, given you have less assets as far as cap space, as far as draft picks. So this might be as good of a time as ever to capitalize on that, because the unknown going forward. But definitely I agree with you. It's not a Super Bowl or bust season. We got Robert Caslow coming in saying, "Need the offense to carry Wilson. Not all the time, but better. The offense clicks, the more opportunities for Wilson." David Vasquez, hello, David. How you doing over on Facebook? Saying, "The key to the season for us is the offense helping the defense get off the field." What do you think David means by this? Typically, it's the offense. The offense doesn't help the defense get off the field. It's the defense helping the offense get back on the field. Defense got to help themselves get off the field.
I think he's hinting at that idea of the less opportunities that you give the other team, because your offense is actually continuing drives, eating up clock, and making the defense where they don't have to be on the field for 40 minutes of the 60 minutes of the game. The Broncos have been doing that a lot lately, of that 3-and-out offense. Boom, defense is right back out there. They try to get those stops, and I think we've seen a lot where first quarter the defense plays outstanding, and all of a sudden they're kind of going, okay, the offense is doing nothing. And they just kind of, you feel the air just let out in that moment for them, just going, man, we're giving everything here and we can't go win this game because we still can't go score, 20 points even. I think last year the Broncos held teams to, I think it was 17 or fewer points in 8 games last year. Best in the NFL. You know what their record was in those games?
Not good.
It was actually 6-2 when they held them below 17. But you had, that was the mark for the defense. You had to say, we have to hold them to this kind of level. And when you have to do that week in, week out, that's a lot of pressure to put on a defense that has key injuries that were happening. You traded Von Miller. You just were asking a lot of them to have to go be perfect every single week. And so, the offense, you get any kind of consistency out of them. You get them up to 24, 25 points a game. Like that makes a huge difference in how the defense has to play on the field.
Yeah, 100%. I don't disagree with you one bit. We got Mike coming in here with a beautiful mountain alpine lake there. I can't tell what lake that is. Moraine Lake? Is that the one near Aspen there? I can't tell. Let us know, Mike. But it said finally made it to a live show. Good. Well, thanks for joining us, Mike. We also got Andrew Baker, one of our big time supporters, coming in saying, "Sup, Nick, Carl, and Scott and fam." Regardless of Russ, who is going to be the impact player on the offense and defense. So not including Russell Wilson, who's the impact player on offense and defense. I'll go first on this one, kind of piggybacking off what you said earlier. As far as, Patrick Surtain's your most valuable player, not named Russell Wilson on this roster. But as far as impact this season, Bradley Chubb needs to show up as a top 5 pick. And there's a lot of talk about him, dominating OTAs. And granted, some of that was against, gosh, I can't even remember his name. The backup right tackle that was playing because he has so many injuries. Braden from Michigan, who has like 5 snaps on the offensive line in his career, was your starting right tackle there. So Bradley Chubb better be beating the tires off that guy. But Bradley Chubb definitely on that side. On offense, I'm guessing I'm really hoping that Cortland comes out and announces his presence here outside of Russell Wilson.
All right, so I got to come up with 2 other names because those are 2 great picks.
Yeah.
I'll go surprise one on defense. Josey Jewell.
Ooh, all right. I'm listening.
Just because one, he is the signal caller on the field. His presence was really missed. It took a long time for that defense to really figure out how to play without him on the field. He's really good against the run. I'd say he's above average against the pass. I saw they put out their top 10 list of stack linebackers and I guess their Madden rankings and then how they did against the pass. And, you saw those guys. Some of them were pretty consistent across the board of what they bring to the table. That's what makes them great. They can help in any way possible on the field. And so, like I said, having Josey Jewell back, I think will be a huge addition to that defense, more than people realize. I know he's a linebacker. Linebackers don't matter, but I'm going to go there. Just throw a weird one out there. But and then on offense, I guess I'm going to go KJ Hamler.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think his type of game lines up so well with what Russell Wilson wants to do. And, obviously in the early part of the season, they're going to limit a little bit of what he brings to the table. But that second half of the season, I think he could be the one that really spurs that offense to take that next step when he gets fully healthy and getting his wheels going down the field. And, it's nice that easier part of the schedule, at least what looks like the easier part of the schedule is early on. So you can kind of work some kinks out as you go. But then that second half, man, that's going to be a gauntlet to run through. And so having a guy like KJ Hamler that maybe adds another element and makes defense have to go, oh man, now we got to handle this. How are we going to do this? We have to keep this extra safety back, whatever it's going to take. And then the run game takes off. I just think that he could be that impact player that, we talked about it when, I hate to say this player's name, but Henry Ruggs, when that draft was happening. And we said part of what we liked about him is he makes such an impact even when the ball's not coming his way, because teams have to really game plan for what he brings to the table.
Yep.
And, KJ Hamler, he's kind of a little bit lesser version of that on the field.
Yep. 100%. Thank you so much, Andrew. We also got Travis coming in saying, good evening, Nick, Carl, and Scott in Broncos country. Any truth to the Denver getting the linebacker out of Kansas City? Couldn't remember his name. Well, I haven't heard it. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Anthony Hitchens?
And it's just a rumor. It's just a guy that, hey, Broncos have a question mark at linebacker, and Hitchens makes sense of a guy that's on the market that probably wouldn't cost that much. I think it's more just connecting dots than actual rumor of, hey, this is going to happen.
Well, you know what? Any more Hawkeyes we can have on the roster, the better. So we could have 2 Hawkeyes starting at linebacker. That'd be awesome. Iowa has some really good linebackers on their team this year, too. Kayleon Green, hello to you. Also, we got Gary Leeds Palmer saying, hey, Nick and Carl and Scott. Hello, Broncos country. Go Broncos. Let's ride. Thank you so much for the stars, Gary. It's always great to see you. Chase Wellner, building the Broncos. Fist bump. There we go. Boom. Good to see you. Robert Castle saying a successful season is sweeping the AFC West teams. That's a high bar, Robert. I'm not sure about that one. That might be pretty rough. But if that happens, definitely you have a inside track to the playoffs. 6-0 with the rest of the schedule. I mean, at that point, if you didn't make the playoffs, it would be really, really disappointing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That could be the 6 toughest games on the schedule. Is the reality at this point.
Don't give Raiders that much credit.
I know, probably shouldn't give the Raiders that much credit, but still, I mean, they got a lot of talent on that roster, and division games always bring out the best in teams. So I think, yeah, those 6 games, if you could win all 6, to me, if you go 4-2 in those games, that is a highly successful run through the division.
Yep. 100%. So now it's me. Again, we're talking about we got some spammers in here. Let's get rid of those guys. Thank you so much, Scott. So the biggest factor for if the Broncos will have a successful season this year, you kind of skirted around it, which I'm glad you didn't really dive into this as much. But we talked about somebody earlier, I can't remember who it was, said that the offense being able to carry Russell Wilson some. And this is something we kind of talked about all season that I've been talking about a bit. It's even when we went from the conversation of going from what Drew Lock was in 2020 to Teddy Bridgewater in 2021, incremental improvements at the quarterback position make massive differences on your roster. And I think there's no debate that Russell Wilson is a top 10 quarterback right now, but that's a big difference than being an indisputable top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And that's not a gimme anymore. I think there's a definite top 4 right now, but the Broncos, if they're going to be successful this season, or they definitely would be successful this year, if Russell Wilson once again enters that no doubt conversation of being a top 5 quarterback in the league. And that's not a gimme. Obviously, his play has dipped a bit over the last few seasons. A lot of people are saying, oh, Russell Wilson has been found out. How much of that is, Pete Carroll putting locks or, limitations on what Russell Wilson wants to do? How much of that is just issues with Seattle's personnel? Don't know. The NFC West being really tough. A lot of questions there, but this season will be a success. No doubt in my mind, if Russell Wilson restamps his claim as a no doubt top 5 quarterback rather than a top 10, because going from, let's say, Russell Wilson top 10 quarterback, I think your expectations this year are 9 to 11 wins, 9 to 12 wins with the roster. If he's top 5, you're talking 11 to 13 to maybe even 14. There's that much of a difference between top 10 quarterback, top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it changes everything for the entire rest of the offense too.
Mm-hmm.
If he's playing at that kind of level and teams have to say, okay, we have to stop this guy, then at that point you're going, okay, now we have to dare the Broncos to run the ball. Do you really want Javonte and Gordon running at you? Not really. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch there at the running game. It's kind of, I hate going back to this game of the Tampa Bay versus the Chiefs, but Tampa Bay pretty much said, we're going to dare you to run against us. And they pretty much banked on Andy Reid living up to his kind of pride that he wants to win through the air. And that's exactly what he did for that first half. He just refused to run the football, even though they were getting like 6 yards a carry when they did run it. And Tampa Bay just said, yeah, we'll give that to you. We'll give you those 6 yards. And so if he's playing at that kind of level, that's what teams are going to have to do. And that's why I love that the Broncos have such a balanced offensive attack right now where they can win through the run game or through the pass game.
Yep. And the other thing, too, and it's something that the Broncos have been feeling for years. Lawrence Rivera coming in first for the Stars. Thank you so much over on Facebook, Lawrence. Hope you're doing well. Hope your Tuesday has been pretty good. Good evening to you and your family. Something else here in the Broncos country has felt it for years, especially the defensive players, is that if Russell Wilson is playing at that top 5 level, you're talking about the margin for error that you feel being so much more. You talked about the Broncos defense having to get 17 points or not give up more than 17 points. That makes the defense and the offense walking on eggshells when they're going up against Patrick Mahomes. And you're just so much tighter. Every single possession is just so much bigger where you can't relax. And the air can come out of your defense really quickly when you feel like you have to play perfect. I definitely remember feeling that way going up against, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning when they were elite and we didn't have an elite quarterback in Denver, having to be perfect in every single phase. So again, Russell Wilson going from what did ESPN rank him at? 8 this season, back up to that tier of Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, different conversation totally this season. And I think, again, if he can go from top 10, no doubt, to top 5, no doubt, definitely a successful season. Change your expectations a tier as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, him going to that kind of level also means that he has elevated all the wide receivers, the tight ends, running backs, everybody. All of a sudden, Cortland Sutton. I had somebody ask me the question of who's a player that hasn't made the Pro Bowl that could really make the Pro Bowl this year. And Sutton's name kept coming up. And, really for him to get his name into that, he's going to have to put up 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. There's so many great wide receivers. And unfortunately, it's kind of because it is a popularity contest. If you don't have that huge name, you're not getting in. And Sutton right now, I mean, he has a decent name, but he doesn't have a huge name because he just hasn't put up the big stats. And so, yeah, he's going to have to take that huge monumental way up. And Russell Wilson's going to have to be a part of that for sure, obviously.
Yeah, and again, it just all comes back to the quarterback for me. You need a good team around the quarterback, but if your quarterback's playing great, you don't have to be perfect around them. And it makes me think of Bill Clinton, 1992. It's the economy, stupid. It's the quarterback, stupid. It always will be. You got to have the stuff around it, but quarterback is the first one there. So let's get it in here. Again, bring everybody up to speed that's been joining us here. What we're talking about here. So we just talked about the biggest thing that needs to happen for the Broncos to succeed this year. The Broncos will succeed if you said pass rush is healthy, adequate, making an impact. I said Russell Wilson goes from top 10 quarterback to top 5 quarterback, back to top 5 quarterback. Now let's do the Broncos season will fail if.
All right, I'll go. Since I talked about the edge players, let's go to the tackles now. Because, I mean, we said it earlier, AFC West loaded with edge players other than the Chiefs. And even the Chiefs have still Chris Jones, a couple other players that can still make a little bit of an impact there. They just got Karlaftis added to that edge group from the rookie class. But really the tackles, Bowles 2 years ago, second team All-Pro. Looking like that guy that's just really going to finally emerge, finally getting things. Last year took a step back again. It wasn't as bad as he was before. He was still good, but he wasn't at that outstanding level. And so I'm just worried what happens now. He just lost his offensive line coach. He was really, really close to him. And, those two finally figured out how to really communicate with each other. What happens now with this new offensive line coach coming in, this new offense that they're going to be running? How's he going to work with that? Obviously, still have to figure out who's going to start at right tackle. And if that position doesn't look good, it could really pretty much dismantle this offense pretty quick. Yeah. Russell Wilson, he can make chicken out of what, but it's still you don't want that guy taking more hits than he has to. Yeah. He's still on the wrong side of 30 at this point, and you want to protect his body because you're not only thinking of this season, you're thinking beyond. You want this guy here for the next 8 years. That's part of why you made such a big investment in him and why you're going to give him a large contract after this season. And part of that's you got to give him good protection up front. And so, like I said, right now, the offensive tackles, they could go a lot of different ways here. Yeah. If they can get average protection from the right tackle spot, if Garrett Bowles can get back towards 2 years ago, pretty close to what he was doing there, that offense is going to hum. I mean, they're going to be top 5, top 7 offense. I fully believe that. But if those guys aren't at that kind of level, like I said, then we could be talking an offense that's more middle of the pack pretty quick.
Yep, you're right on that. And let's say hello to some more people in here. Andrew coming back in, saying for a good building the Broncos conversation, let's talk tight end. Fans have crowned Alberto Cuebanam after losing Fant, but does Greg step up over him? I think you're not going to, I don't have big expectations this season from the tight end position in general. Looking at, I know that the Broncos, Justin Outen was the tight ends coach for Green Bay, but Nathaniel Hackett's still, the guy. I guess Russell Wilson's the guy. Nathaniel Hackett's second in charge, but Packers didn't really utilize the tight end position from a target perspective last season, unless you consider Alan Lazard a tight end, which we can have a conversation about that. But a lot of it was red zone, some chain moving, and blocking from the position. So I don't think any of these tight ends should be crowned. Need to see it. I guess there is a chance for Dulcich, but I think Dulcich he suffered a injury in OTAs that he caused him to miss a bit of time, and not significant, didn't sound like, but it's one of those things like Baron Browning suffered that injury, and then we didn't see him really emerge until week 8, 9, 10 last season. So those injuries early on for the rookies, especially when, they're drinking through a fire hose, can really set them back. And I think you're going to see some Albert Okwuegbunam out there this season a good bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if that tight end is more so an extension of the offensive line, and rather you see Tomlinson or Saubert out there as much as these more, glamorized passing guys, in order to try to get the defense to commit to more base packages or more cover 1, cover 3 kind of looks, to make it easier to get those shots over the top, to create more space for your wide receivers.
Yeah. So the team that used their tight ends less than the Broncos and the Seahawks last year was the Packers. I think the Broncos and Seahawks were at like 22% of snaps.
Are you talking about targets? Or are you talking about on the field? Okay, targets.
Targets, yes. And the Packers were at 18% last year, one of the lowest marks in the entire NFL. So as much as I want to talk about tight ends, I'm not sure how much they're really going to be a huge part of what they're trying to do. I mean, it's why a little bit the Greg Dulcich pick kind of makes not as much sense as you would like. If you're going to use a third round pick on this guy when you're limited on how many picks you have, and yet he's going to be limited in what you're actually going to bring to the offense. I want to see what they have planned for that. And yeah, I'm sure they're going to have a few packages this year just because they like him. Obviously they wanted him in the draft pretty early. I don't know if anybody else watched the kind of the inside the facilities tapes, and they're sitting there and Nathaniel Hackett's got that nervous energy going, should we move up? Should we get up? Should we do something to trade up? And they're just like, no, let's just sit back. We'll see if he falls to us. And
they traded back.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Then they even traded back and made him even more nervous. But obviously they still got their guy. So they were pretty happy about that. So I do think there's going to be something for him, but for the most part this season, I still think it is Albert's year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing here about the talking about the tight end position is that, again, not going to be a 1-for-1 with what the Packers did last year, but I was pulling it up. Let me see if I can find it here real quick while I'm doing this. But I would really think that the target distribution last year, or receptions for this team, I think the running backs were as high as any of the wide receivers not named Devontae Adams. So of course I looked it up, and it's only tight ends and running backs together, but tight ends and wide receivers. So I can't see, but I'm pretty sure that Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon together are separate, were like number 2 and number 3 in target distribution for the Packers last season. So even then, you have some question marks about just the overall usage of the tight end beyond being a dictator of opposing personnel, that kind of thing, which there is value to that, but really curious. I mean, again, Tim Patrick said it months ago, saying this is the first new offense that's never been seen with Hackett and what Russell Wilson wants to do. So we'll see what it looks like. Obviously there's key tenets and principles and whatnot, but who knows? Who knows? Golden Girl coming in saying, how many quarters will the starting players play in the preseason games? I'm hoping 1 or 2, if that. And you're talking, that's a total quarter. So maybe like week 1, they don't play. Game 2, they play 2, and then maybe game 3, they play 2 again, or 1 or none. I mean, just maybe even less than a quarter for some of them. And maybe you have the positions where there's more question marks going on, but like Randy Gregory, Bradley Chubb, don't need to see him. Patrick Surtain, don't need to see him. You're good, buddy. Russell Wilson, have a seat. Let's see 100 carries for Mike Boone. I'm fine with that. Let's pump that up. But don't think you need to be seeing the starters out. I mean, did the Rams last year even play a single starter 1 snap?
I don't remember. I didn't really watch many of their games.
I think it was Sean McVay who was pretty early on the, why the hell are we playing any of our players in preseason games that don't matter? We're not going to do that. So, and teams have really leaned into that pretty quickly. So could be none, but we'll probably see some, but I don't think a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think just because you have so many new pieces coming in, especially at that quarterback position, you want to get a little bit of in-game action. But I think they're going to care a lot more about those dual practices, those joint practices that they're going to go through. I'm not sure. Have they announced who they're doing that with? Is it the 49ers again?
I think it's the Cowboys.
Is it the Cowboys? Okay. But those practices actually matter a lot more to their evaluation and trying to figure out how things are going. And so I think they'll be fine if, like you said, maybe a quarter or 2. I don't think you need much more than that. Russell Wilson's going to be fine. A little bit of snaps here and there. Okay. But like I said, the risk is way beyond that of the reward.
Yeah. And it is the Cowboys, August 11th. They will be with the stars on their helmet. Maybe some Rain and Gregory will be hassling on them on the sideline. William, we see your question here with all the question marks. Do you guys think Cortland Sutton will be a top 10 wide receiver this year? And how many touchdowns for Jerry Jeudy this season? I think Cortland Sutton could be a top 10 wide receiver this year. I wouldn't bet on it because there's a lot of good wide receivers right now, and the Broncos have a bevy of pass catching options. That means that he's not going to have to be force fed, which would inflate his numbers, but definitely could be up there. If he's playing well, we'll tell you guys, you can see with your eyes, but even if he's not getting the target distribution, we'll be like, listen, guys, this is a really good player that's not getting enough hype right now. Kind of like what we are with Draymond Jones on here. Hopefully that won't be the case because the national eye is on Denver again with Russell Wilson and the AFC West, but we'll see. And how many touchdowns for Jerry Jeudy this season? I will go with 5.
That was the number I had in my head. I don't think he's going to be a huge touchdown wide receiver in his career. Cortland Sutton, because he's got that jumping ability in the red zone, he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. You got Tim Patrick on the other side. That's also a big touchdown guy. He can get up there, make catches. Got Albert Okwuegbunam, who's big, can get up there, basketball guy. So I think in the red zone, he's just not going to be able to get the targets to get to that kind of double-digit touchdown area, at least this year.
Yep. Absolutely. So now it's my turn to talk about the Broncos season will be a failure this year if, and obviously a lot of people have been talking about this in the comments, no doubt, but I'm going to highlight one specific player that I believe is the linchpin for his entire side of the ball, and that is Patrick Surtain. If Patrick Surtain misses a chunk of time or has an injury that causes him to miss time and then dip form as well, the defense, which Mike Clay had ranked as the 18th best defense in the NFL, will plummet to a bottom 10, maybe bottom 5 unit this season. I think it's really could be that much of an issue because after that, it is a heap of unknowns / guys who can't even come close, in my opinion, to filling Patrick Surtain's role. Granted, obviously, not many guys who can do what he did last year. He had the best EPA for a rookie defensive cornerback since 2016 by like a wide margin. Really good season. And I think it was Ari at PFF saying that Patrick Surtain was his vote for the player that is going to emerge and become a superstar from last season to this season. So losing Patrick Surtain at all, what does the cornerback room look like without a Patrick Surtain? Quan Williams right now, you're penciled in as a slot, but I don't think he's versatile to play the boundary. Michael Ojemudia is a question mark. Damari Mathis like the pick, but a rookie, also a question mark. Then you have Darby, who I think is a very solid number 2, despite his lack of ball production, but you switch his assignment from number 2 to number 1, where the Broncos last year were essentially using Patrick Surtain as one side of the field blanketing kind of guy. The whole structure and key tenets of the defense change. So I think this season could fall apart quickly. Obviously, the quarterback's a dumb one. Oh, if Russell Wilson goes down and you're playing Lord knows who, you or me at quarterback, yeah, duh. But I think Patrick Surtain being healthy and playing the season through is beyond imperative for this team because I can't imagine what the back 7 looks like without him. At least a successful version of this back 7 without him.
I think back to the 2005-2006 season for the Broncos with Champ Bailey. That was the peak of Champ Bailey with the Broncos. They didn't have a great pass rush back then. They had some decent players, but nobody that really stood out big time at least at that point. They drafted Doomerville in 2006, but he wasn't Doomerville until a couple years later, really. And so really they designed that entire defense around Champ Bailey, where they said, you are going to shut down this one side of the field, or at least this number 1 wide receiver. And we're going to have to send extra guys to kind of simulate pressure because we don't have the guys to actually do it just with 4 up front. And so they were kind of doing a little bit of smoke and mirrors up front just because, like I said, they just didn't have the talent. But the only way they could do that is because Champ Bailey was doing Champ Bailey things. Patrick Surtain could kind of be in that same area, if he takes that next step into that superstardom as a cornerback, where you really do. You design that entire defense around him. Problem is that player goes down, then you're scrambling going, oh no, what do we do? Because now you got to start moving a bunch of different pieces around and trying to make something work. And like I said, it can go from quickly a top 10 unit to a bottom 10 unit just because of that one player.
Man, yeah, if Surtain goes down, we're in a world of hurt. They're going to knock on wood for that one. But I just think that, he's the defense already feels a little bit like, what's the game? Jenga, especially with the question marks at the defensive line. I think it was, again, Mike Clay had the edge rushing group as the 22nd ranked in the NFL, the interior defensive line as the 23rd, and I think the linebacking group as the 23rd as well. But he had cornerback at 9 and safety at 7. Don't quote me on that, but that's the range. You take Patrick Surtain out of that, and it's just, I don't know what it looks like. And you probably go from, again, 18th, middle of the pack defense, let's just call him 16, to probably 24 area, which your offense has to be top 5 to, I think, make noise and to have a successful season if your defense is that poor. So we'll see. And also that puts so much on a rookie defensive coordinator in Ejiro Evero as well. Right now you have a guy where it's like, okay, we can play man up one side of the field. We can rotate a safety down post snap on the opposite side of Patrick Surtain with the single high safety instead leaning to the other side of the field. If it's Darby Ojemudia and Williams or Mathis, then I don't know. Not obviously not as good. Right. So we got Gary Leeds Palmer coming in here saying, I was thinking about Elway's best moves of his tenure. And of course, getting Peyton Manning is number 1, but I think getting George Paton is number 2. What do you think about this, Carl?
It's still got to be Von Miller. You know, that first draft pick of his to get that right. You think about, I mean, most people were not actually predicting Von Miller to go to the Broncos. They had the defensive tackle, Marcel Darius, if I remember right. Yep. They had Patrick at cornerback, which, I mean, that would have been a good pick too. Yep. I would have understood that one. But most people are kind of going, you're running a 4-3 defense and you're drafting an off, you know, an
Sam.
Yeah, kind of thing. And kind of going, how are you going to make this work? He just said, you know what? This guy reminds me of Derek Thomas. I hated Derek Thomas when I played. I got to get this guy on the field because he's going to do the same to other quarterbacks. And you think about that 2015 playoff run, Von Miller put together probably one of the top 3 best defensive performances when you add up all those games together. I mean, just impact play after impact play. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think you have that Super Bowl without that making that pick of Von Miller. George Paton, I mean, that's a great signing for sure, but we still got to see how's this going to show up on the field. Yeah. Right now, the only thing that we have that's showing up on the field is a 7-10 season. Yep. That's not good enough. Now, obviously, yeah, you got Russell Wilson now. It should be better, but we still got to see how that's actually going to play out.
Yep. 100%. A lot of question marks, but we'll figure it out. Obviously, I would say that Elway bringing in Manning is number 1. Maybe number 2 is the pivot from Fox to Kubiak and that all working like Wade Phillips and everything like that. That was a crazy good maneuvering there by Elway. It's not always typical to look back and like, hey, we're going to recapture the glory days, bring these guys back. A lot of times doesn't work out, but that 2015 season, man, an anomaly, but one that they can't take away from us, right? That flag still says champion. Okay, cool. So that's okay. As far as George Paton being number 2, the ink is still wet on that one. Very much could be, but do want to see how it plays out. So definitely an interesting one. Also, I mean, gosh, you have to give him credit for, in general, it's not a specific move, but the ability to build arguably the all-time greatest offense in 2013 and then shift and build the all-time greatest defense in 2015. Crazy. Just to talk about a not for long league. There's a reason that, you know, look at this team right now and you're like, okay, well, we're good at position X. 2 years from now, you could be trash. Look how quickly things can rotate and change there in the league. So definitely want to give him a shout out for that one as well. Lawrence Rivera coming in with the stars saying, how many games do we got till teams actually have film on us that we should start worrying about? This is an interesting question. I mean, there's already tendencies and whatnot that you have. I don't think you have to worry about it as much anyway, because it's on the coaches to continue to add things off of what they're running. If you are worried about putting out tape and then other teams having it, it means that your coaches have the inability to play that chess and make a move before the other team is making a move. And you just always want to be pivoting and kind of adding new things to your playbook. And you're showing them one thing, and then the next week you're adding a wrinkle.
Right. I think of, you know, like John Gruden was kind of one of those guys where usually his team started out the gate on fire, and then the season kind of went downhill quickly. He didn't make as many adjustments. He kind of thought, hey, my offense is just going to keep working what I'm trying to do over and over again. And, you know, down in Arizona, that's another one that a lot of people have talked about, where you get to December, Arizona goes from top 5 team down to, you know, bottom 10 team pretty quick because they stop adjusting on what they're doing on offense. It'd be interesting to see now that they've added a couple pieces to that offense, and Kyler Murray being healthy, getting back some other players on that offense as well. But at the same time, I mean, there's some tendencies there that you see. yeah, Nathaniel Hackett, I don't think we're going to see as much of that. I think he's got quite a bit planned on how they're going to build as the offense goes. And they've got enough pieces around that they can just say, okay, early on, this is how we're going to try to attack. Now we can switch, and now Jerry Jeudy can be the guy that's going to be highlighted because now they're trying to stop Cortland Sutton. And I think they'll be okay.
Yep, 100%. It will be really interesting there. Also, we got Gary coming in and says, depends on whether the scheme is disguised well enough. If you have the same lineup on every play for a bunch of moves, it neutralizes defense and makes them play you honest. And Peyton would do this. I mean, defensive players do this too. They show you something, and then they do the exact opposite. It's a game of chess out there, and from the players and the coaching staff. And Scott makes the comment in our chat here saying that we have 18 years of film on Tom Brady. Hasn't stopped him. So also, I mean, perfect offense beats perfect defense. There's always very rarely is there perfect coverage, right? There's almost always an out. It's just timing and everybody else doing their job sometimes, but it's an interesting conversation. So Carl, before we start to wrap it up here, we're at 45 minutes. Any honorable mentions or other ones that we didn't mention here that you were curious about? Broncos will succeed this season if, or Broncos will fail this season if, that we haven't touched on.
Well, I think, you kind of hinted at injury to Surtain. But I think also the interior defensive line with the Jones boys, one of those guys goes down, that depth. That's one area that, like, off-ball linebacker or stack linebacker, whatever you want to call it. I'm not as worried about that because you got some depth guys that, like, you're kind of even across the board. The backups aren't going to be this huge drop-off compared to last year, I would say. Sternad was not great when Jewell went down. But I think you got enough backups there that you can be okay. But that interior defensive line, you're probably going to have to start looking at maybe some rookies having to get some very meaningful snaps at a position that takes time to develop. You're looking at Ajim possibly having to start, and we have no clue what that guy is in the NFL at this point, especially as a starter. As a spot guy, he has his moments. Starter, that's a whole new ball game there for him.
Yep. Absolutely. The one we didn't really, you kind of hinted at it a bit, touched on it a bit for your failure, but I'm going to lean over to the left a little bit on this. And the interior offensive line, they were not very good last year. Dalton Reisner's advanced stats were poor. Lloyd Cushenberry, probably one of the worst 5'10" centers in football. And Quinn Miners, while he looked really good in flashes, it was still a rookie season, new scheme, things changing here. So there's been a lot made about Russell Wilson's inability to work the short middle of the field and the quick pass game, a little bit more of a home run or check down kind of guy. And if that's the case, even this year, let's say it's overblown, but let's say if it's even fractionally true, your run game has to be formidable, and they have to be able to carry the load and the onus that otherwise would be the short, quick pass game over the middle of the field. It's why, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, sometimes always didn't have those dominant pass game or dominant run games, but they could use the quick pass game as a running through the air, I think is how somebody put it. Maybe it was even Tony Romo. Talking about those teams can run through the air. I don't know if Russell Wilson has the ability to run through the air. It's also another reason I don't see him being, a 40 to 50 pass attempts a game kind of guy. And for the running game to be successful in that kind of way, interior offensive line can't be what they were last year. They have to be a couple steps forward. And with Mike Munchak being gone, a new scheme, and there's a lot of questions there. So that is a really big make or break this season. They'll be successful. The Broncos will be successful this season if that interior offensive line comes together, formulating a top 10 unit on that offensive line, because then the run game will be cooking. It's not all on Russell Wilson, but right now it's pretty. Right now that's a big question mark.
Yeah, I don't disagree one bit with that. Like I said, we have no clue who the starters are going to be other than Garrett Bowles at this point. I think we could pretty much pencil in Lloyd Cushenberry at this point. They don't really seem to have much competition going his way. And then I'm guessing Quinn Miner is going to be the starter at right guard. Just seems to be going that way as well. But yeah, left guard, right tackle, no clue. And like you said, if those guys are not playing at a high level, a quarterback like Russell Wilson, yes, he can escape. But when you're getting pressure in his face right off the bat, that just completely destroys every quarterback in the NFL. It's why, for me, like if we're talking about prime Von Miller against prime Aaron Donald, I'm taking Aaron Donald just because he can get that quick pressure right up the middle and disrupt the play that way. You can kind of put a tight end, and I don't know, you can put a running back to help out in the middle and have extra guys help. I guess there's different ways you can stop them, but still, just like I said, if you can get that in the first second and a half, it's done for. And so it's Oh, and Phil, yes, we want to make sure to get to you here. Thank you so much for the stars saying great show tonight. Go Broncos. Thank you so much, Phil. Really appreciate that because we love doing these shows. And guys, we're almost through that dry season. Oh, we can see the paradise on the other side. And I don't know if any of you guys are going to training camp this year. I'm hoping get out there at least a couple days. Hopefully it's cooled off by then. Otherwise it gets really hot on that hillside, but very excited for that. And I did want to say my excitement has reached that level where I'm going to have the monkey tail beard next week for the show to set us up for camp.
Well, don't tease me. We have to see it. This is what's really good for the video form of the show. So if you people listen after the fact to the audio, make sure you tune in next Tuesday because Carl's gonna have the monkey tail. Man, we've been talking about that for a bit. I'm excited to see it. I can't grow a beard like you, Carl. I kind of get a little bit going on there, but not great. I try to pressure my friends when we went backpacking, have some mountain mustaches to shave everything else because my wife hates mustaches. She'll probably divorce me or something, but at some point it's going to happen. There's other names that I like for the mustache as well. I almost said it, but I will save that for another day. But appreciate the heck out of you guys. Make sure you're tuning in next week to see Carl with the monkey tail there. Also, make sure you're following us on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at BTB Football Pod, as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you head to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And of course, please subscribe, like, and share to our show over on YouTube. Click the bell notification for the alert so that way when you know when we go live. We appreciate the heck out of you guys. And Lawrence saying, should I do one in my profile pic for next week as well? If you're talking mustache or monkey tail, I'm in all the way. So we'd appreciate that a lot. That'd be great, Lawrence. We'll consider that. I would consider that superstars in my book. So appreciate you guys. Carl, what's the rest of your night looking like?
Well, I'm going to be working on an article coming out. We're talking about units here today and what they can bring to the table. And something I saw this week was Broncos finished third in the NFL in separation in wide receivers, tight ends when they're actually out there in coverage. And, just to be able to see that kind of thing and know part of the problem last year, it wasn't those guys getting open. It's quarterbacks not being able to get the ball to them in the right place, right time. And so having a quarterback as accurate as Russell Wilson, that's going to be something pretty fun to watch this year for sure. Get Jerry Jeudy a step, that guy can do something special.
And you have to get into that a little bit because I do want to, just real quick, just a little sidebar, a little bit of a coda here for you guys listening. Is that per target, yards of separation per target?
I think it's actually geared towards they just watch them in every snap and said this is how much separation they had on every single snap.
Okay.
Because it's from PFF. And so, like I said, Broncos finished third last year.
Okay.
Now, their top guy is actually gone. I will say that. Noah Fant was the tops on the Broncos at like 4.2 yards of separation.
And that's because he's going up against linebackers, folks. That's again. But I am curious about that because I think there's a little all football stats because it's a dependent game on everybody else doing their job. But Teddy Bridgewater would not throw guys unless they were open, right? So that leads to people being more open based on the data because he's not forcing balls in there. So you're having the ones where you're not getting an outcome where there's guys with less separation because he's not forcing it in there, which probably different from Russell Wilson who's going to fire it in there. But will be interesting to see that. I'm just curious about the methodology. Maybe I need to. She doesn't work there anymore, but maybe reach out to Kendall to see what's going on with that data. But appreciate you, Carl. Good luck with that article. I'm going to get on cooking dinner here and do some more unpacking of the house and trying to get everything set up for a busy August where I got a lot going on. So I hope everyone's staying cool. I know it's hot out there. It's going to be hot here in the Pacific Northwest next week. So hopefully we'll get by that. And we appreciate you so much. Again, make sure you're following us, like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you guys next week. We'll see you tomorrow night on Mile High Insiders. Carl and I will see you next week. And we'll see you tomorrow morning on Scott's channel if you're interested in forging the Falcons as well. We appreciate you guys. Choose kindness, choose compassion. And as always, go Broncos.